Okay. Thank you. Good morning, everybody, both in the chambers and online, and welcome to this morning's Performance Audit and Risk Committee meeting. We'll kick into it straight away. So first, I'll just ask if there are any apologies. I do have an apology from Councillor Hopkins, who's unable to join us today, but are there any more? And sorry, and I have a 10 minutes late from Mayor Kircher. No, so could I ask for somebody to move that we accept that? Moved by Councillor Ryan, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. We'll carry that. We'll then move on to declarations of interest. None. Thank you. And we'll quickly just confirm the previous minutes. So does anybody wish to speak to those? Nope. Okay, thank you. Can I move that we accept them? Have someone move that we accept the minutes, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Halale, seconded by Councillor Ryan. All those in favour? Against? Again, and that's carried. So before we kick off today, I'd just like to propose, please, that we shift a couple of the agenda items around. We have our auditor joining us this morning, and because of the change in timing of today's PAR meeting to be the start of the day rather than later in the day, Derek's going to have to move on. And so I'd like to do agenda items 5.4 and 5.5 first up, please, so that we can have Derek join us online and then allow him to get back to his day. So if everybody's comfortable with that, we'll kick off with agenda item 5.4. Derek, I understand you're online.
Morning, morning, Simon.
Excellent. Thank you.
Morning, committee members.
Thank you, Derek. Amanda, do you want to, or Paul, do you want to introduce this at all before Derek cracks in?
Okay, so this is the audit plan for the audit of the financial statements for the 30 June 2025 year. So the year that we're going to finish in only 2 months' time. We have worked through, we've seen the draft version of this report and worked through it with the auditors, firmed up all the logistics. They're actually halfway through the interim audit right now as we speak. And they're due to come back for the final audit in September. The fee was negotiated in the prior year for a 2-year period, so that isn't up for discussion at the moment. And we've also discussed the key areas, similar areas of focus to prior years, and the items that the auditors have identified are in line with officers' thoughts. Some new ones this year. We've implemented a new payroll system, so that'll be a key area of focus that hasn't needed to be completed previously. And another thing I wanted to highlight is, given the timing of when our audit takes place and needing to sign the annual report by the legislative deadline of 31 October, we will have a new council in place and we'll have to firm up exactly when we're going to hold a council meeting to adopt the annual report. So that's the key points I wanted to raise.
Thank you. Derek, I'll hand over to you.
Thanks, Simon. Thanks, Amanda. I think Amanda's already given a thorough overview of what's included in our audit plan, and also take the audit plan as read. So happy to take questions after my brief summary. Probably the only point that I will add to what Amanda has indicated is the focus also on the disestablishment of the Waitaki District Health Services Limited entity and what that means for the consolidation process. Again, I think also a focus this year is still on the group consolidation. Our next item, when we look at the management report, there's still some items coming through from recommendations we made around the process, and hopefully that can be implemented for this year's audit so that the consolidation process actually runs a lot smoother. So the consolidation is still a big focus, seeing that the issues that we had in the prior year, plus the fact that the hospital will be, or the entity will be disestablished this year, and what that means for the group consolidation. As Amanda indicated, the timing has already been confirmed, and we will be signing and council adopting on the 31st of October with a new council in place. And we've also just highlighted some other areas pertaining to the audit fee disclosure. There's changes to the accounting standard that requires more transparency around different services being provided by audit service providers and the fee that needs to be split out in accordance to that. And also there's been a change to the group auditing standard, ISO 600. So that also will require us to engage a lot more with the respective component auditors of the subsidiary entities. So those are some of the changes that are coming through this year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Derek. I'll just note that we've had Mayor Kircher join us and Councillor Holding as well. So, look, thank you, Derek. I guess my read of this is that the biggies for the audit plan for this year versus the sort of standard things that we do on a more regular basis are one, as you mentioned, the potential impacts of the winding up of Waitaki District Health Services Limited, and specifically one of the areas that I am really going to be keeping an eye on is around that consolidation piece and really trying to ensure that by the dissolution of Waitaki District Health Services Limited, we can then remove that necessity to embed the Observatory Village in our audit process, because that's obviously been both an expensive and cumbersome process for us over the years. But secondly, I'm interested maybe in just teasing out a little bit more the discussion around the implementation of the new payroll system, and if you could just talk to what you'll be looking for in that and why it's a significant item on the audit plan this year.
Yes, Simon. So whenever there's a change in systems, we always need to ensure that the integrity of the data that comes across to the new system is still appropriate. So we do engage our IT auditors to assist us with that. So they run processes to ensure that the data that was on the old system is still the same data that has been transferred to the new system. Normally, that is also done by, council will have, or an entity will have processes on its own side to ensure that there are systems and processes in place and governance structures to monitor the progress of a new system when it's implemented, and ensuring that there's appropriate data, that data is appropriately handled. And often, you find that systems are running concurrently between an old and a new system until everyone is satisfied that the new system is running as intended. So from our perspective, it's mainly focused around the integrity of the data, so that what we previously audited is still the data that we are currently auditing.
Thank you. I'll open the floor up for questions. Does anybody want to ask Derek anything about the audit plan and what's being proposed? No?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Councillor Blackler.
I just had a question regarding the forward projections for local water done well, and what audit will be looking at through that initial phase, followed by what an appropriate path for council to take would be around addressing reasonable forward projections around where overheads might sit in the future.
Councillor, I think as probably part of the long-term plan audit, we are looking at those forward projections for your proposed changes to your water reform program, specifically transferring assets to a new entity. But from the audit perspective itself, we are just ensuring that there's appropriate disclosures being made within your accounts and your report to reflect the current status and what you are intending to do in the future. So we don't actually look at forward projections as part of the annual audit. The annual audit mostly focuses on historic information. And as I said, that is more the focus of the long-term plan audit, which is also, we'll be re-engaging with council come mid-May to look at the finalization of the long-term plan before it gets adopted by the end of June. Also to mention that we are expecting the bill to be enacted sometime during the middle of the year, and we need to then ensure what the impact of that will be on the disclosures within the council's annual report, and whether that fairly represents your status quo.
Does that answer your question, Tim?
Yeah, thank you. Cheers.
Excellent. Any further questions on the audit plan that Derek's presented? No, if not, could I have someone move that we accept it, please? Moved by Deputy Mayor Halala, seconded by Councillor McCone. Thank you. All those in favour? And against? Thank you. That's carried. We'll now move on, Amanda, Derek and Paul, to agenda item 5.5, which is the Audit New Zealand report to the council on the 30 June 24 audit. And again, I'll invite Amanda or Paul to speak to that before Derek.
Okay, so this is the report from the auditors outlining their findings from last year's annual report audit. The audit took place September, October last year. Seems like a long time ago now. Opinion was issued 5th of November 2024. We concur with the key findings in the report, and that matches the key areas of focus that they set out in the audit plan for the prior year. The revaluations, the consolidation, and they've also highlighted a few systems and control improvements that are required. So officers are working on making those recommendations as soon as we can. Yeah, that's my main points.
Thank you. Derek.
Thank you, Simon. Yes, again, the audit report for the 2024 financial year was qualified, and that was mainly as a result of the movement of the revaluation that still went through the comparative figures through your statement of comprehensive income and expenditure. So we are expecting that qualification to disappear this year. If everything goes well, there will be no other qualifications. So that was the last year of that qualification. So we did issue an accept for audit report. As Amanda indicated, our focus areas was around the revaluation process. We were satisfied with the council's methods and processes with regards to revaluing their core infrastructure assets, which was water and roading. So no issues identified during the year. There was an uplift of 105 million for 3 waters and 2.3 million for roading during the last revaluation cycle. Also, we did identify issues with regards to our performance measure relating to roading, the smooth travel exposure. Although we were comfortable in the end with what council had done, we are highlighting that as there might be issues going forward. Previously, council used a service provider to do the traffic count and the smooth travel exposure, whereas this was done in-house last year, and we did find that there was a considerable drop in the traffic count compared to what the external service provider did. So there might be issues going forward if the same approach is adopted by council. So that's something to keep an eye out for. Also, again, as I mentioned earlier, around the group consolidation process, we did make quite a few recommendations for improvement in this area, as a lot of additional time was spent in terms of the group consolidation, as also reflected by the number of misstatements that we identified during the audit process. So those are probably the key items that we highlighted within our report. I'll pause there for any questions. Thank you, Simon.
Okay, thank you. So the traffic count one's an interesting one. Does anybody want to speak to that? Yeah, maybe there's just less traffic, but
Yeah, it's just the way we're doing it in-house, not measuring it as often. I just want to highlight that that's probably going to be exactly the same situation for this financial year as well.
okay, thank you, so we'll cover that. Derek, the misstatements, I mean, if I look at that on page 69 of our page 8 of your report, what are we talking, a total of $515,000 of misstatements, which seems relatively immaterial.
Yes, so those are, just want to get to that page.
Page 8 of your report.
Yes, so in terms of council's accounting policy, investments need to be fairly valued, and those investments are carried at cost. And even if we did an assessment of what they would be if reflected at fair value, and that would be below our materiality threshold. If the fair value of those were indicated to be above our materiality, then an adjustment would have been required. Otherwise, it could have been qualified.
Okay. The other question that I just had was with regard to the table under 1.2, which is where you set out the actions taken in the previous priorities. You've got in here open recommendation, so there's no urgent actions, which is great, and a wonderful sort of statement for the team. But so you've got none for urgent, you've got 9 for necessary open recommendations, and then 6 implemented or closed recommendations, and at the bottom you have a total of 15. I'm just struggling to get my head around that. I mean, if we've got 6 implemented or closed recommendations, why are they being counted as part of the total, and are they different to the 9 other ones?
Yes, yeah. I mean, it was 15 total recommendations, of which 9 is open and 6 was closed. So it's probably just the way in which one can read the table. So there were a total of 15 recommendations, and of those 15, 9 are still open and 6 has been closed. So effectively,
Okay,
there are only nine recommendations left.
And of those 9 that are open, what ones would you be concerned about if they hadn't been closed by this time around?
I'll probably just need to go to the appendix. So appendix 1 gives the detail of all those recommendations. There's one around water loss, which is still in progress, and a lot of these were when they were carried forward from the previous year. I mean, they don't have necessarily an impact on the audit opinion. I would say the new recommendations, in my mind, is quite crucial, specifically around the group consolidation process. The roading assets to be recorded in RAM is quite critical. Again, that I think with the revaluation being performed this year might be an opportunity to address that as well. There's again a recommendation around the roading valuation report. So again, that can be addressed when one engages the external valuer to do that valuation.
Okay, so they're the top ones.
Yes.
Excellent, thank you. Any questions from the floor for Derek? Nope. Okay, then can I please ask somebody to move that we accept the findings from the last audit, 5.5. Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? And again, thank you, that's carried. And thank you, Derek. Thank you for making yourself available this morning to be able to present to us.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, committee members. Cheers.
Alrighty. Oh, we're back on track. We'll move on to agenda item 4 and 4.1, the Treasury strategy. Again, Amanda and Paul, I'll invite you to speak to this before we open it to the floor for questions.
First, I'd like to apologise. This strategy should have come to the last power committee meeting. It's setting the strategy from 1 April, so obviously we're already a month into this. But the strategy is proposed to be the same as previously. We're keeping a tight grip on our cash and closely monitoring projected cash requirements. Continuing to liaise with our GFA for our borrowing, and investing our extra funds in the same manner as previously. There's a current situation, our investments are close to 20 million now, given the significant repayment by Observatory Village back in February. And we're keeping a tight rein on our debt, which we actually had a significant, we'll talk about this further in the financial summaries, but we had significant debt repayment in the middle of April, and the balance is reduced significantly now.
Thank you, Amanda, and I guess as you say, we were hoping to get this last month but couldn't, just because of all the pressures that we were under. And again, the following two agenda items are somewhat a repetition of one another when we're getting a report for the end of February and a report to the the end of the March quarter, but that's okay. We've got the numbers in front of us. So I'll open, before I speak, I'll open it up to the floor for questions. Tim?
Thank you. Just on page 15 of the report, where it's kind of set out about the plan with for the term deposits. I just wanted to understand the rationale for fixing. Like, I understand on one hand fixing it 4.7 to 4.9 till 2030, 2031, but are we comfortable doing that because we anticipate that the cost of borrowing is going to be lower than that?
So it's all about spreading it out in line with our borrowing limits. So we get advice from Bancorp about what maturity and what rates and stuff. So we get the most. So the key thing we look at is the maturity dates and spreading it out over our debt profile isn't all maturing in big peaks and troughs. It's flattening it out within our limits. So we had been, a lot of our other maturities are close to the 27, 28 sort of years. So this is bringing a few out further, and these are the most competitive rates we could get for that maturity timeframe.
So remember,
My apologies, just on rereading it. Well, I've actually misinterpreted what was written there. So
it's a good point, and for the benefit of all of the members and those online, it is a really prudent risk management strategy to make sure that you spread the maturity of your risk, and Bancorp help us with our treasury policy and understanding that. So when we have the opportunity to be able to extend some of that debt out to the longer terms, which you'll see on page 14, we haven't got any of those buckets yet. It's quite a useful thing to do, and especially when we start to see the rates dropping back off with the changes in OCR. So I'm very supportive of what's been proposed there. Further questions from the floor?
Not really. I think it's pretty much what we've been told to expect, and we're expecting it. It's more of a comment than anything. The expenditure that item of those major ticket items, I think it just goes that we've just got to carry on being as prudent as we can. We've probably overextended ourselves on capital expenditure for our income, and we need to finish these off and get them paid for before we look at other things that are coming down the track, especially within the light of the water system coming through.
Thank you. I guess for me, with the repayment of the Observatory Village loan now and the reduction in our loan to external parties now being at around 20.7 million, the thing that stands out for me is that around 80% of that's sitting with irrigation companies, and so that's a significant amount of our on lending sitting within one industry. And so what I'm wanting to do and what I will do is just go away and understand the risk profile of that a little bit more to make sure that the interest rates that we're receiving are reflective of the credit in that space. Sorry, and I note also, if I look further down on page 13, and again, this is really just because this is a report that's come here later than the report should have come here. And if anybody was looking to question why we had $8.7 million sitting in a call account earning less than 2% interest, it's because we wanted to put it somewhere because we had every intent of repaying debt the next month, and that was the best place that it could be for a short period of time.
Yeah, that's correct. It's, it was, the bulk of the cash was put in a term deposit. And then has been used to repay the debt when it, matured in middle of April.
Excellent. Mayor Kircher.
And probably for the benefit of the public as much as anything, is it not possible to repay debt before it matures?
It is possible. It does come at a cost to break it.
And given how close the debt was to maturing, it was the most prudent thing to do. So we discussed that when we put it on deposit at the time. Are there any further questions on agenda item 4? A question, but a comment?
No, it is a question. So, just following up on your comment about the irrigation company, so North Otago Irrigation Company and the sort of management entity Aquis, I've always been very open to come to council, or I'm sure it would come to the committee if you actually wanted to discuss that and with the committee members in the next meeting. Their cost of debt and their financing structure is something that the board is continually looking at. So they'd be, I think, very happy to come and talk to the committee if that was the desire of yourself and the committee members.
Thank you for that. I'll take it offline and look at whether we can do that. But it's certainly something that I'd be interested in. And I just really made the point that of our 20 million now, a good sort of 16, 17 of it's sitting in one industry, and I feel like I need to understand the risks in that industry a little bit more, and I'm sure the other park committee members would benefit from that too. So thank you. On that note, if there's no further questions, could I ask somebody move that we please accept? Moved by Councillor Blackler, seconded by Mayor Kircher. All those in favour? Against? Again, that's carried. So we'll now move on to agenda item. Where are we up to? 5.1 financial summary to end of February. And I was going to say we could talk to both at once, but we really should go through it in stages. So Amanda, Paul, I'll open it up to you again.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak to the 28th of February one, given that, sorry, it should have come to the last committee meeting. Spend more of the time on the 31st of March, the more timely report. But yeah, it's pretty much the same financial picture as previous months.
So is everybody comfortable with what Amanda's proposing, that we take 5.1 as read, because we're going to speak to it in more detail on 5.2, the quarterly one? Okay, so can I ask somebody to move that we accept that, please? Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? And again, that's carried. So on that basis, we'll move on to 5.2, the update for the 9 months. And again, Amanda and Paul, I'll invite you to speak to this.
Okay, so this is the results for the first 9 months of the 25 financial year up to 31 March 25. The financial result is behind budget by about 7.5 million. Same sort of story that I've spoken about all year. Just the timing of the capital works on significant projects like the event centre and the Forester Gallery, with those projects starting slightly behind, it means the revenue that we're receiving in terms of grants is behind as well. So it's just a timing difference of when we'll receive that revenue. It's about 5 million behind budget. And expenditure is 2.4 million ahead of budget. And a lot of that is to do with the depreciation impact from our valuations at the end of the previous financial year, and the costs of project reclaim 1.7 over budget in this financial year. So it's a lot of timing differences. And overall, the balance sheet's pretty much as expected. The main differences are with the Observatory Village repayment and borrowings being a lot less than expected. Because of the Observatory Village repayment, and also because we've deferred the 20 mil of capital projects into the next few years. In terms of capital expenditure, we have changed the figures in there to take out that 20 mil. So we're looking now at the picture that we are predicting for the 25 financial year, and just bear in mind that 20 mil has been removed from that. And it was slightly over budget, sitting about where we expected it to be at this time of year. It's quite hard to plan capital projects because they can change quite a bit throughout the year, but yeah, it's sitting about where we expected.
Thank you. So just on that capital expenditure item on page 24 of the report, we can see down there at the bottom that to March it's 29,143. The budget was 40,466, but that's with the 20 million stripped out or without?
I'll have to.
I think it's going to be without, isn't it?
Yeah, I think it's without.
Because to me, that then says, okay, so if that's without and we've stripped 20 out and we're now 11 behind budget, 11 under, that means in fact we're probably 9 over.
Yeah, so we don't actually budget CapEx throughout each month. I'm pretty
Yeah,
sure
it's
that's
lumpy.
budget for the full year of 40 with the 20 removed.
With the 20 removed.
Yeah, so it's actually like the budget for the full year. So for 30 June 25, like what we would spend 40 for the whole year, whereas in the annual plan it was 60.
Okay.
So-
But because, yeah, and it's just the lumpy nature of it.
And so we're 9 months through the year and we're sitting at 29 mil out of a full year forecast of 40. So we're on track.
Thank you. Mayor Kircher.
Yeah, and just looking at that, it looks like the main differences in parks, one of the differences in parks, and I assume that's the event centre timing would be an indication of that kind of difference.
Yeah. So if we just pick up on that and go back to page 22, Amanda and Paul, where we're looking at the financials, and we can see in there the government grants and subsidies line 11.4 versus a budget of 18.5, so that's 7 million shy. That's the 3.6 for Forrester and the 4 for the event centre.
Yeah, so just to clarify that split doesn't seem to be working properly between government grants and other grants, because obviously we're not getting grants from the government for those two projects. But yeah, the shortfall, if you take both those two lines, government grants and subsidies and other grants and donations, we're about 5 million behind. So that represents the 5 mil grants and donations on those two key projects, which are not government grants.
Yeah, thank you. I guess that's where I was getting a wee bit confused. So, the other questions from the floor, Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. Just regarding personnel costs, is this inclusive of all personnel costs, i.e. the costs that go to capital related projects, or is that an additional above?
Sorry, I should have mentioned that. So that's something we've started doing going forward as well. So we're taking out the year-to-date employee costs that have been capitalised. So they get, instead of expensed, they get recoded to the value of an asset and put on the balance sheet, just so we're comparing apples with apples. So you can see our year-to-date figures are calculated on the same way as our forecast. So we're forecasting 18 mil now, down to close to budget. Whereas previously when I reported this, we were forecasting a higher amount because it hadn't considered taking off the amounts capitalised.
So when we've set the budget, in the past, it's always accounted for the capitalisation of a portion of the wages, but we've counted as we progress through the year the actuals, and we haven't journaled it out effectively.
Yep, exactly that. So we always budget that we will capitalise for the whole year. We will capitalise an amount, usually around 2.5 million, to assets. So staff time that is directly working on building an asset gets put to the balance sheet instead of expensed here. And throughout the year, we typically hadn't taken account of that. It was just the cold hard what we'd paid in salaries and wages that was reflected here, and not taken into consideration what should be capitalised throughout the year, because usually it's just an annual process that we go through. We just sort it out at 30 June type thing.
Which is a reason why we always have historically reported that our staff costs are over budget, and then it cleans up at the end of the year. I mean, it's kind of confusing and I think I'd quite like to see both sets of numbers, to be honest. I'd quite like to see the cold hard. This is actually what we're paying people every week. It's going into their bank account, and then I'd quite like to see this is, the way that we budget and the capital expense, because I think it's an area that both the public and the committee are pretty interested in.
Also, for me, it leads to a further question around, so when we say we have an FTE count of, I just can't remember, is it 219? Is that inclusive of allocation to capital works, or is that just for the operational part of council?
So the FTE reflects the physical amount of people that we have, the full-time equivalents that we have. So that includes, if say there is a staff member that 50% of their time is working on capitalising an asset, it does include that, includes all of them. Anything that's expensed or
Yeah, so
capitalised.
you can't cut a person in half, but you can cut their salary in half. I had a question around, and I'm just comparing now the February financials with the 9-month financials, and we had in the February financials under other expenses an overspend of almost $2.3 million. But when I look at the quarterly update for other expenses, it's coming in pretty much bang on. So I was really concerned when I saw the February report and it had $2.2 million overspend of other expenses, and there was no explanation in the commentary for that. But when I looked at other expenses in the 9 months, it was pretty much bang on. So I was less concerned because I thought whatever happened had been remediated. But I'm just wondering whether there's an explanation for that.
I don't know that offhand, sorry, I have to look into that. It doesn't make sense. So the same variances are still there on the separate lines, the depreciation and project reclaim shown separately. So I'll have to delve into exactly what's included in other expenses and work that out.
Thank you. That would be appreciated, Councillor McKay.
And just a query, Amanda, you talk about the ETS levy on page 21. Does that mean we're going to get a bill if we don't get it back, or is that a credit that just sits there for the amount of units we're holding? So how does that work?
Yeah, I had the same question actually, because it said the council was holding. So did we purchase NZUs on the basis that we may need to surrender them as part of Project Reclaim, or are we just holding them on the books as a potential liability?
We hold units for our forestry specifically, and obviously we used to have the Palmerston landfill as well. So we have, and we always hold units and have to surrender some every year when we put waste to Palmerston and if we chop down trees. So in the past we have brought them when we've needed to, when they've been really low cost. So this is just letting us know what we have available. Obviously it's there and it's to use against when we cut down a forest.
Yeah.
And in terms of the levy, we haven't paid it. We don't expect to have to pay it. But yes, if we had to pay it, we would have to find the money.
Thank you. That's really useful, because I guess, like Councillor McComb, when I read that, I'm strongly of the view that we will not need to pay the levy associated with what we've done under Project Reclaim, because if we did, that's an incredibly perverse directive from the Crown. And so my concern was that we'd purchased credits on the basis that we might need to do something that we really don't think we'll need to do. And so your explanation is really useful. Importantly, though we have those units for a good reason. We have those units because we actually have real liabilities under the ETS, and we need to have them on hand to be able to reduce those liabilities as and when we need. So thank you. Mayor, did you have a question? Comment?
Just that I think it's sitting with Cabinet at the moment as to whether they waive that charge. So we've been told it's imminent.
Yes.
It must be getting more and more imminent by the day.
Yes, I'll be following up again when I get back to Wellington as well. Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. I was just wondering regarding the user charges, would we be able to have any explanation around, say, the top two or three areas where we've seen a reduction in.
So this is on page 22, Tim, under the financial statement. that you-
Yeah. And also just the explanation around the finance revenue set against the finance costs is the reason we haven't seen a reduction in the finance costs yet, just due to the timing difference of waiting for those loans to mature to pay down, pay down a tranche of money from LGFA. Is that why we haven't seen that flow through yet? Is my question.
Yeah, it's quite hard to budget. It's the finance costs move basically in line with the amount of debt that we hold. So we would have predicted to it's just all to do, it's mainly to do with CapEx. So we might flatline our CapEx throughout the year and expect like it actually comes in waves. So it's just a timing thing with
It's a little bit tricky too, right? Because we're effectively hedging our debt in those buckets as well. At any point in time, even in an OCR declining market like we're sitting at the moment, at any point in time, you're going to have something historically that you probably got at a really decent rate. So, for example, if you look on page 29, we're at 1.5 million rolling off on the 15th of April, or had it rolling off at 0.73%. Right? You're not going to refix it anywhere near that for some time now. So there's the unders and overs, and the job of the team obviously is to try and make sure that working with Bancorp, we always hedge to a rate that's the most efficient possible.
No, I guess my question was, I felt I would have expected with Observatory Village that we should see, a decrease against budget, given we haven't borrowed to the level but is that just because that kind of hasn't flowed through yet in the numbers?
Yeah, so for the full year picture, you'll see that more. So because it'll be 5 months of the year, they repaid in February. So the overall debt balance across the whole year will be lower than we expected it to be because of that early repayment, and because we're not going to be spending as much as we're forecast on capital. But yeah, it's just a timing difference at this point in time. Like when we set our budget for the balance sheet, it's quite flat throughout the year. And just spreading the CapEx evenly across the year, whereas it's all to do with timing of when the loan goes up and down. So it's just, for this 9 months, it would have only been the Observatory Village repayment hadn't actually happened yet, so it hasn't taken effect.
Yeah. And the user charges?
Yeah, I have to come back to you on that one. I have to delve into that line a bit further. So you want the top two? Is it okay to come to the next power or in between?
Yeah.
Councillor McCone.
I'll just make the comment, and what I don't like, numbers with brackets around them and forecasting in ahead in this situation is very hard. I think I wouldn't say we're in a good space, but we're in a space that was better than expected. And to me, the devil in the detail is actually depreciation, which keeps coming in and throwing our figures out on something we can't control that number. So how we deal with that or work with it, I don't really know.
Yeah, thank you. Amanda.
I think we are, by having the annual roading revaluations going forward, it's going to hopefully sort that a lot more, or bring the numbers a lot closer to like what we expect to land at 30 June 25 when we set our budget. Should be a lot closer to reality. And we are also keep completing our roading valuation over the next month as well. So that should give us a good idea when we set our budget, what the depreciation will look like for the future years now. The waters valuation is the big one. So we had that done last year, and as Derek mentioned this morning, $105 million increase. So it's when you get the big ones like that, that's really affected this financial year. But and hopefully we don't have those big hikes and costs as well going forward. So yeah, I think with having the annual valuations, it can smooth out depreciation and make your expectation a bit more in line with reality.
Thank you. Are there any further questions from the floor? No, if not, then can I ask somebody please move that we accept the 9-month update? Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. That is carried. And we'll move on now. Back now that we've had Derek come in earlier. Report. Agenda item 5.6, the health and safety update. And I'll invite Peter to come speak to that, please.
Kia ora. Thank you for your time this morning. The paper has been presented. We're reframing the report to power to really focus in on our critical risks and the incidents that occurred in the reporting period, which is on a quarterly basis, around what are the critical risks that occurred and what are some of the actions that we're taking. Most notably, what you'll see in the report is that we're seeing a significant increase in threats of violence and aggression towards our staff. This is something that all councils are grappling with. There was an article in the press last Monday around the increase in aggression towards members of staff at Christchurch, Selwyn and Waimakariri Council. We need to review our controls in that space. We've rolled out situational training for staff, so we delivered that yesterday to 30 staff members. We're also currently out seeking quotes from security companies to take a look at our sites and to take a look at our security controls to make sure that our buildings are safe and we have the right controls in place, and working through what those recommendations might look like. But other than that, the paper is presented, and if any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you, Peter. And this is the first time we've had a health and safety update come back to the par for a while, and so I'm really pleased to see it back on the agenda again. I think it's something that's obviously really important for us to keep an eye on, and I appreciate you bringing it to us. So I'll just open the floor up for any questions or comments with regard to it. Councillor Blackler.
Thank you. I'm just thanks for the appendix outlining the critical risks there. I'm just wondering why there's nothing regarding the airport. Around this table multiple times in the past, we've requested to have some oversight around some of the risk and outcomes there. So I'm really keen to see that flagged in this report.
Thank you. We can incorporate the airport into the report going forward. We do have there's different ways that you can cut what that would fall under if there were incidents that arose at the airport. For example, would it fall under the critical risk of loss of life or grievous bodily harm, or anything along those lines? So we can build it out as being a specific piece. I think we have items that we need to work through with the airport on reporting of health and safety matters, particularly from our PCBU responsibilities, and working with our tenants. So we're in active dialogue. I believe Joe O'Neill is leading that work and building that relationship, and we will be looking at our health and safety controls through that lens as well.
Thank you. And just one further comment. Yeah, while we've got the loan and remote work, and no incidents reported as such, but you know, in my mind, I think for at least a small cohort of our workforce overall, I think that's a very real and potentially elevated risk that you know deserves a good amount of attention. I think we talked about that at the last meeting as well, where health and safety came up.
Yep. So with that, as you can see, we've had no incidents in that space, but that doesn't mean that the risk doesn't exist. Our controls in that space relate to our GPS monitoring of our fleet vehicles, line management responsibility on checking with staff when they are working in a remote area. And as part of that, also looking at the situational safety, making sure that our area leads, locality officers and other staff who work on a loan basis quite regularly have the right training and support to mitigate any incidents as they arise. But we can take a look at the controls in that space as well and make sure that they're adequate.
Thank you. I guess if I use Waitaki, or what was Waitaki District Health Services as an example, the district nursing team there have quite a useful tool that they use for that specific scenario. So might be worth taking a look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you. That would definitely look. Thank you, Peter. As I mentioned, I really appreciate this report coming in. I guess you know, when you have such a diverse operating environment as Waitaki District Council has, you know, you're going to expect that you're going to have to rescue a few people from the swimming pool every now and then, and you're going to expect when you're running an Alps to Ocean operation that there's going to be some people fall off bikes and hurt themselves. And so as long as we're kind of over the top of that, that's okay. The standout for me and the upsetting thing, and I think we spoke to this in the last PAR meeting when we looked at risk and risk ratings, was just the increase in public threats and abuse and sort of, you know, just general threats to our staff, which is, you know, I just think sad and unacceptable. And I just would really like to work with you to make sure that we are doing absolutely everything that we can to both minimise the frequency and the impact of events like that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Mayor Kircher?
Yeah, just an observation and a question, I guess, just looking at what is included and what's not included. We, as you've mentioned, we do have Alps to Ocean in there and a number of incidents that have happened on there. But we do seem to be treating that differently to our roading network or our footpath network or any of the other facilities that, or amenities that we're responsible for ensuring they are being kept safe, basically, the people using them. So I just wonder, I know we can't report on everything, but you know, what's the delineation, I guess, when we have Alps to Ocean in there, which we don't have control over the people on there any more than we have people control over people on the roads or on our footpaths. Yet we report the one, we don't report anything on the other.
Right. So yeah. So your question is, why is that in and others not in?
Yeah, we have a joint committee, which
Sure.
yeah, I think it's quite fair for any incidents to be reported through the joint committee. But whether it's
but if we're reporting on incidents at the aquatic centre, then why are we not reporting on people falling over on the footpaths that we're not?
Well, the aquatic centre, I mean, we do have control of people in there.
Accept it. So,
But on
Peter,
the footpath, not, and on Alps to Ocean, not.
do you have what qualifies, what doesn't qualify, and why it's in and why it's out?
I can comment. I think it's important to differentiate that health and safety risk is in two categories. So there's general health and safety risks and controls versus critical risks and critical risk controls. Critical risks relate to grievous bodily harm and potential for loss of life. One of the things that we rely on for our health and safety reporting is for it to be reported to staff and for it to be lodged in our health and safety reporting system, which previously was Safehold system and is now an Employment Hero. So what has happened in this case for the Alps to Ocean incidents to appear in this reporting is that it's been reported to a staff member and they have logged it as an incident and it's been categorized as a critical risk issue, a critical risk hazard, as opposed to when someone has an issue on a footpath or something that is more mainstream, when that is reported to customer services, that typically ends up in our CRM as opposed to in the health and safety system. Where we have had incidents involving pedestrian environments, we have undertaken reviews. For example, the car incident earlier this year, late last year, outside the Opera House, had a review as part of that process. But ultimately that's differentiation between how it's ending up here, where it's a critical risk report as opposed to a general health and safety matter. I hope that makes sense.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, it's an answer, but it kind of generates a few more questions as well, doesn't it? Yeah. So sometimes we report on things because people tell us about them, And so we can report on them. But so it's what I'd be really interested in is just understanding over time, are there areas where we are aware that people aren't reporting on things that perhaps we should be looking at a little bit more and including those as well. So it's great that we're reporting on the things that we know about. Are there things that we don't know about that we should be trying to uncover to report on as well?
And it does, well, one question it does lead to is we have a road safety person and on staff, and you know, I don't need an answer, but what's being reported through to that person and what's the interaction that person has with police and others, emergency services, in identifying issue areas and so forth, and equally why aren't they being reported through potentially? So I just asked officers just to look at some of those situations, because managing risk on roads and footpaths and so on is part of our decision making along the way as well. And I think that's, yeah, but as much as there's a differentiation, I don't totally understand the line that has been drawn.
Thank you. So look, it's great, and as I said, I'm really pleased that it's back on the table. The mayor's commented that there could be a few more areas that we might like to put in here or understand better, and I think that that's absolutely valid. But Peter, did you have something you wanted to say? Oh, sorry, Paul.
Yeah, so I suppose, yeah, and that really last comment is why observation was included. There were a number of incidents a number of years ago that related directly to basically the condition of the track. So therefore, there was a request from the committee for a greater focus on A2O, because considered that the track itself can vary far more significantly in a short time frame compared to most of the other networks that we operate. So it was a request of the committee that we actually collect and highlight what was happening on A2O. And again, if there's other areas of interest that the committee have, again, would be quite happy to collect that information and present it. It's not a systematic difference. It was a request from the committee for more information on what was happening on the trail.
Thank you. Are there any further questions? No? Great. Thank you, Peter. Could I ask somebody move that we please accept the update? Moved by Deputy Mayor Halale, seconded by Mayor Kircher. All those in favour? Against? Thank you. And again, that's carried. Thank you, Peter. I have been reminded by our dutiful governance officers, of which we have two here today, that in my toing and froing, I forgot to I bypassed agenda item 5.3, the Treasury report, and so we go back, please, and have again Amanda and Paul speak to that briefly.
Sorry, that's page 25.
Okay, so in line with the Treasury strategy, this is the report for the quarter to 31 March 25. It is a little bit out of date, so I'm also going to talk about what's happened in the middle of April because it's a bit more timely. So yeah, in line with the Treasury strategy, we are borrowing from LGFA and keeping a really tight rein on our cash balances. The balances you see here were at 31 March. The cash did appear high, but as we discussed previously, that is because of the maturities on the 15th and 16th of April. So we had the 5 million, some of the money from Observatory Village in term deposit, and the rest was in call account to manage our cash requirements on a day-to-day basis. And with the maturities of 11.6 and 13.5 on the 15th and 16th of April, those funds were used to repay that debt to LGFA, and then we subsequently borrowed 12 million back. As we've previously discussed, 5 mil out to 2030, 5 mil out to 2021, and the a 2 million on 3-month commercial paper. So this ensures that all of that cash has gone to repay the borrowing. So our borrowings balance actually right now is closer to 73 million. Our cash balances are pretty tight, but we have our next rate instalment due on the 25th of May. Yeah, so that's how it's sitting currently.
Sorry, Paul, you wanted to?
Oh, yeah, and I think just probably following up from sort of Councillor Blacklow's question earlier on, highlight the couple of charts in the Bancorp report. I'm just trying to see this.
Page 34.
Yeah, just showing how where we're positioned in terms of the Treasury policy, and probably note in particular that the comment in the graph show that WGC is running a Treasury policy minimums, meaning that it's getting the full benefit, the lower rates allowed within the policy parameters. So, that's sort of good third-party verification and show the effort, the benefits of working with Bancorp to sort of get try and maximise the benefits of our debt policy.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great image of the buckets that we were talking about before. I think the one of the standouts for me is back there on page 25 when we're talking about the return on the investments. So our finance revenue is 6.19%, and we're borrowing at 4.52. And I think that that's probably one of the wider spreads that we've seen since during my tenure on the path. So that's a great effort from the team. But I'll open it up to questions from the floor. No. Excellent, thank you. Could I ask somebody please move that we accept the Treasury Report Agenda Item 5.3, moved by Mayor Kircher, seconded by Deputy Mayor Halale. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, that's carried. That now takes us to the end of the public forum session. And so I'd like to thank all of those online and those who have joined us in the chambers today, and ask that somebody please move that we go to public excluded. Moved by Councillor McCone, seconded by Councillor Blackler. All those in favour? Against? Thank you, that's carried. And thank you, everybody. We'll just pause for a couple of minutes while we do our technology magic.